The second feature film of the English director genius, the British-American crime thriller and black comedy Snatch, was released in Great Britain on August 23, 2000. The great success of Locke set the bar high, but Ritchie seems to have managed to jump it. At the time, many thought it was a sequel to his first film, as it shows some similarities with it in its structure, visual style, and atmosphere. But this one has a darker tone and is much more satirical, and, one might say, it is also more violent. But at the same time, the funny elements, the funny characters, and humorous dialogue somewhat compensate for this, so it is not a grey thriller or crime, but an extremely entertaining work. The similarity between the two films is further enhanced by the fact that many actors who have already shown their talent in previous cinema were given roles in this one as well. For example, one of the film's main characters, Jason Statham, who plays a spiv illegal boxing bookie nicknamed Turkish, and his childhood friend Vinnie Jones, who this time also plays a tough guy, Bullet-Tooth Tony, as well as Alan Ford, who, although he was only a narrator in Locke, is now one of the central figures in the film. He took on the character of Brick Top, the dreaded and ruthless gang boss of the London underworld. In addition to them, of course, there are many great actors in the film. For example, Brad Pitt, he needs no introduction, I think, who plays the gypsy wrestler One Punch Mickey, incredibly well. The role was simply made for him. No one else could have played it so well, I'm sure. There's also Benicio del Toro, the Sicario films, The Usual Suspects, who perfectly portrays Frankie Four Fingers, as well as Jason Fleming, Darren, who is Mickey's right-hand man and who also starred in Ritchie's debut film. Plus, we also have to mention Stephen Graham, who plays Tommy, the somewhat incompetent friend of Turkish. Before that, Graham mostly appeared in short TV films and series, and his career was also launched by Ritchie. Since then, the public has seen him in many large-scale productions, Pirates of the Caribbean films. The screenplay was also written by Guy Ritchie, which was so well done that it is already a reason for someone to watch the film, and it is not a coincidence that the story got its own series more than 15 years later. The production debuted in 2017 with Rupert Grint, Harry Potter movies, in the lead role and as an executive producer, and has had 2 seasons until now. The main producer of the 1-hour 44-minute film with a production budget of approximately £6 million was Matthew Vaughn, this time as well, but he no longer took on a role here. The story of Snatch runs along 2 main lines, the central element of which is an almost priceless 86-carat diamond the size of a walnut, which the many dubious figures and underworld characters of course want to get. There are illegal boxing matches, dogfighting, robbery, and many forms of violence. Watching the film, you can almost smell the sweat of enforcers suffering from testosterone overflowing, petty criminals, or profit-driven gangsters dazed from drugs or alcohol coming through the screen. The narration of Turkish provides a great framework for the story. Just like in Locke, this method has worked for the director here as well, and it works great. Time in this movie is not necessarily linear in all cases, and it is possible that at first watch, the many events seem a bit confusing, and it is also conceivable that the whole picture comes together in one's head only after many viewings. However, if you have it, it can equal an aha experience. The fact that the plot takes place again in the background, with the introduction of many seemingly separate events and numerous characters, then with their meeting later, is fulfilled somewhere in the not-too-distant future, also speaks to the director's genius. Not to mention the compilation of one of the funniest casts. It would be difficult to talk about the main starting point of the story without spoilers and do a more detailed presentation of the plot, so I would skip this for now and focus a little more on the characters. I can tell that much that, similar to Locke, here there are up-and-coming criminal seedlings, who happen to be Turkish, and Tommy, after a deal gone wrong, suddenly causes some trouble for one of the most feared figures of the London underworld. Which, of course, thanks to some threat, they treat it with sufficient seriousness and try to fix the sudden problem as quickly as possible and get out of this situation with a whole skin. During their efforts towards this and in the chain of events and the development of the plot itself, their decisions, their ability to recognize the situation, and their survival instinct are key. They try to do everything to have the best possible outcome of the matter, that is, to get out of the tight state in which they ended up somewhere through no fault of their own. In addition to Jason Statham, I think that Brad Pitt is the other main character of the film, but maybe I just think that way because of their brilliant acting, and actually, the film doesn't even have a central character. If we think about it more, none of them are highlighted at the same level as is usual with a main character to do. By the way, Pitt could easily have applied for the Best Actor Oscar in 2001 for his portrayal of Mickey, at least in my opinion. Because of his Irish nomadic gypsy accent, the creators created special English subtitles for his scenes, which was quite rare until then. There is no doubt that the two of them carry the film on their shoulders, excellently portraying the characters written for them, but no one can say a single bad word about the other actors either. They all did a good job. In the middle of the complications, in addition to the central characters, We also get to know a number of side characters, most of whom have an impact on the progress of the story in one way or another. Be it the three doltish African-American robbers, Vinnie, Robbie G, Mean Machine, Underworld, Tyrone, Aid, The 51st State, Casino Royale, and Soul, Lenny James, Jericho, The Walking Dead, Boris the Blade, The Russian, Rad Sherbagia, Eyes Wide Shut, Space Cowboys, or Cousin AVI, Dennis Farina, Get Shorty. Everyone shapes the story at their own level and with their own set of tools. Each character has something unique and at the same time strange, which makes the film even more interesting, and almost all of them have a nickname, which helps a lot in identifying them in the new scenes. In the film, the dog, by Mickey Dag, named Daisy, also plays an important role. We can thank him for several funny scenes. Ritchie thus proved that the success of his previous film was not a coincidence, and the critics were forced to acknowledge this, both then and now. True, there were also negative opinions that the film starts slowly, as if it doesn't find itself in the first 15 to 20 minutes, and that the story is sometimes confusing. I think, and this is not just my opinion, that if you pay attention to what is happening, you will not only be able to put the puzzle together, but you will also be able to enjoy this great work, among other things, because after put the individual parts together and understood, it can also be a great feeling of success. By the way, no one has to strain themselves to do this. If you watch the film calmly and feel the atmosphere, you will really understand what is happening and even have fun in the process. Overall, the film received good reviews, and its income figures are not to be neglected, as it has earned roughly $83 million worldwide so far. The music inserts, which this time were also great and perfectly suited to the freer use of the camera, and which tracks, like The Lock, from techno to slower tracks, are also selected by John Murphy. The relatively fast pace was taken care of by cinematographer Tim Maurice Jones, who previously worked with Ritchie, with the help of editor John Harris, Stardust, Kick-Ass. Ritchie got the hang of playing with the camera. This unusual style worked great in this film, too. Camera movement can also make objects seem sharper and more vivid than in stationary framings. Certain camera movements give bodies greater solidity. This is apparently one reason modern directors like to circle around the action, as in the opening scene of Reservoir Dogs. The film was produced by Columbia Pictures and SKA Films, and is mainly distributed by Columbia TriStar and Sony Pictures. I would definitely recommend it to anyone who hasn't seen the work yet, because it's really rare to have such a cinematic experience. The story, the atmosphere, the humor, and the characters, as well as the excellent acting work, make this one of my top 10 favorite movies, just like Lock. What I also think is important is that before Snatch, you should also watch The Lock, not because it is a continuation of the story, but definitely from the point of view of the visual similarity, and of course, for the great experience.